Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I am thrilled today to have the Director of Social Media and Content Strategy for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Mr. Zachary Gallia, here with me today. Zachary, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to dive into your world and get to into your sports background. You've been in there for almost 11 years now. So I'm excited to dive into your expertise and what everything you've been doing.
For sure. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. At 11 years, it feels perfectly that amount of time, but also so much longer and so much shorter all at the same time.
Yeah, and I forgot to introduce the host and producer of it all of the very good social media podcast, which I've absolutely loved. And I'm excited for us to talk about that as well, just because it's been such an educational podcast for me as well to get such a wide array of voices and hear their expertise.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's always been something I've wanted to do over the years. I just never pulled the trigger. Always wanted it to be perfect and everything to be planned out
Oh
and
yeah,
every little thing. And it was just time. It was time to do it. And
yeah,
I've had the pleasure of getting to know a lot of people in my time in the industry and learn from so many of them. And so I was trying to think of a way to really bring that to everybody instead of just me learning from these people. Try and get these, brilliant, intelligent, creative people to the masses. So
yeah.
definitely something I'm enjoying, but we'll see where it goes.
It's so funny when I've talked to other podcast hosts, that same thought resonates of like I was so hesitant to pull the trigger for years and do it. And I was the same with this one, but it's so hard because you want it to be exactly how you like have it pictured in the beginning. It's so ugly and it's so just not perfect. But once you get going, it gets going and you get happy with it and you get into the flow of it and you realize, all right, this is awesome.
It's true. Yeah, it's a paralysis by analysis is what I always say. Is like we're in a business where it's like everything always has to be perfect on social, or you have a billion people telling you that it's not. So it's just like that habit has served me well, but it also slows down some other things that you want to do until it's that point.
Absolutely. I'm like, is this cropped properly? Does this
Yeah,
sound right? I'm like, are there too many ums that are being said in the I'm like, it's just a lot sometimes to have to switch back and forth between all the different podcast brains you have to be in.
it's true. So
Yeah.
true.
Hopping into your beginning story of it, you were, digital content coordinator with the Michigan International Speedway, Pittsburgh Steelers, Arizona Cardinals, and now being with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Where did your passion for sports come from in the beginning, and how did that translate to I'm going to work in sports?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Pittsburgh, so I was one of those babies at the hospital with a terrible towel put on them, right after birth. So I don't know that I had much of a choice for sports to be a big part of it, but I've always loved it. My dad played baseball and football growing up. Always loved hockey. I played baseball most of my life. I played hockey all the way through college. So it was just always something where it was, I loved the team environment. I loved, the challenge of getting better and facing different, opponents and, really that growth and development. So it was just always something that was, the main driving factor of my life was just, I was a baseball player, I was a hockey player. And then, once I got to college and knew that, there really wasn't a future after college for sports, it was now what? Like, where do we go from here? And so, I graduated college back in 2011, and social really wasn't what it is today, obviously, but like there weren't classes that had anything to do with it. It really was just kind of like this goofy thing me and my friends would do and make videos for, Facebook to invite people to our parties. And so it was just like getting getting that creative side on top of the sports side was something that was really interesting to me. And through high school, I painted a lot. I love to write. So I was trying to find a way to kind of merge those things together. So thought I was going to go to film school until I realized how much that cost. So turned down that acceptance, and then kind of did a couple odd jobs here and there, and wasn't sure exactly where
Yeah.
it was going to take me. And luckily enough, the job with the Speedway came up, and it ended up being the start of everything. I wasn't a NASCAR fan, still can't pretend to this day to be a NASCAR fan or know much about it, but I thought I was taking the job to do videos and take over their YouTube account and really dig into that. And then, a month into my job, I had a meeting with my boss, and she said I wasn't living up to expectations,
Mm.
which as a perfectionist just killed me to my core. But she basically was like, I thought you would take over the social accounts by now. I was like, I didn't even know that was a part of this job. So consider it done. And then from that point on, it was like I put all of those things that helped me succeed in athletics into effect of like, I need to learn from everybody. I need to try things. I need to experience this stuff to continue to grow. And then, like you said, 11 years later, it's still progressing, and I'm still learning, and I'm still growing. And, I've done so in three different sports, and it's been a blessing for sure.
And we think back to 2011 and we're like, wow, that's like, even for me, I'm like, that is when social media kind of became this big, massive thing of like Instagram was kind of, it was Facebook and then it was Instagram and then Twitter came along. But I think back to that time and it's cool to see the pure evolution of social media and how it is today. I mean, Twitter's not even Twitter. It's now X. And I'm like, I am old enough and Twitter's been around where I'm like, it's still Twitter to me.
I remember I started the Steelers Snapchat account back in 2015. I remember covering games on Twitter where you couldn't put video up and you had to put, GIFs up and things like that. And like I created the Steelers Musically account, which then became TikTok. I remember updating Google Plus for
Yeah.
for the Steelers, for the Speedway. Like
Yeah.
seeing Vine rise and
Yes.
fall and all these different things, and IGTV, it's crazy to think that it's been, like you said, it's been 11 years, and
Yeah.
it feels like I've been doing it for a long time, but at the same time, it's exponentially longer with everything that's happened.
And I want to hit on one of the things like you initially said you're an active learner. It's you're in the industry now where it's kind of you have to be in terms of social media. It is changing every single day. Can you just express in your own words what the importance of self learning and having to go in and teach yourself all of these different things in the social media industry and not even getting into the sports world, but just being in the social media seat?
Well, it's just we're in an industry that if you are satisfied with what you're doing and you don't want to learn anymore, you're going to fall behind. And there's so many resources now where it's just like, I had no idea how to do a podcast, but like I reached out to people, I learned, I put all of that to action. Every episode, I hope it gets a little bit better, but like it's scary that, we live in an industry where failing is such a huge part of it, and you can't succeed without failure. So, you're trying to learn all of these things and just kind of absorb as much information as you can from every avenue to hopefully mitigate those failures and make sure that they're not as big or as crazy, or they're more almost educated failures where it's like, I think we're in the right direction, we got to try this, maybe we're not, we need to adjust it a little bit. So I mean, for me, I always say it's YouTube University. I'm a self-made, self-trained graphic designer. I can't say I'm any good anymore, but basically what got me into the industry is I could do everything. I could shoot and edit and produce video. I could edit graphics. I could take photos. I could do all of that stuff. The younger generation and all the people I work with now have passed me by immensely and all of those things. But it's like that's what it took to get to where I am, is learning and growing and just never being satisfied. I think there's a quote, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but it's like yesterday's success is the enemy of
Yeah.
today's success or tomorrow's success or something like that. So it's like as soon as you're, you know, happy and satisfied with where you are, you're kind of jeopardizing where you're going. So that's not to say, don't celebrate the wins. Don't be happy about what you've done, but just know that the next thing is going to be even bigger, and you have to keep growing, and you have to keep learning, and you have to be curious and just keep growing.
I love the YouTube University because it's so true. If I want to go learn or if I need to figure out how to fix anything in my house, I'm like, how do I do this in YouTube? And there are a lot of videos there to be able to teach you. So it is so true. Like there, it is where you can go learn. And I did the same thing. I was like, how can I add this graphic to a YouTube video? How can I do this when I'm editing? And it taught me a lot. But to your point, I'm like, people probably could pass me now, like 12-year-olds who are just growing up with TikTok videos.
It's amazing for the industry that
Yeah.
like they're like I see, there's 16-year-old kids who haven't even graduated high school that make these insane graphics that even me as like 30 years old working for, the steel, it's like I couldn't even do that then. So it's like it's amazing to see where this industry is going, and all of the talent that's coming is just going to make things so much better and better and better.
Can I just say though, I had actually just said this to we were at a hockey game yesterday and I looked at my dad and it was like kids day for the Carolina Hurricanes. So there was a bunch of little kids and parents were like occupying little kids with like iPads and phones. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm so glad I grew up when I did. Because I was like, there is nothing better than growing up and like watching sports and not having a phone glued to your face.
It's hard, like, especially even like, for me, it's I watch sports through a different lens than I ever did before. It's not necessarily always just like immersing yourself in what's happening and enjoy. It's like, oh, well, did you see what they did in, the game presentation? Did you see what was on the scoreboard? Like their stuff on Instagram is weird, but the stuff on Twitter is amazing. And it's like it just your brain goes to such a different place being in it for so long that it's like you almost have to like actively
Yeah.
watch as a fan and like force yourself to be like, put the phone away, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
let's enjoy this.
Yeah, you kind of, well, and it is, I think, important to put yourself in that fan perspective and say, what does a fan care about seeing on social media? Which leads me to my next question of, for the Pittsburgh Pirates and your content strategy on social media, how do you approach stopping the scroll on whether it's Twitter or Instagram with now sports media? Like every team has an account, every team is trying to catch attention. How do you guys approach stopping the scroll, finding trends, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, like the best answer for finding the trends and things like that is just being on the platforms. Like I have such an amazing team that's so dedicated and hardworking and organized that it's like when trends pop up, like I'm not normally the one to see them because my TikTok is full of, people cutting the grass and building log cabins, not the cool kid stuff. So like it's great to have these young talented people who can keep me honest and keep us informed and make sure that we have our finger on the pulse to move forward. Um, but at the same time, it's just again that hunger to be better and that hunger to, you know, give your organization and give, the fans everything that they deserve. And, me growing up in Pittsburgh, black and gold means everything to me. And it's just part of who I am and what I've done for so long that, you want to celebrate everything that's great about the city and the people. And and a big part of that is our ball club and being able to connect, through the good and the bad with our fans is everything. And so every decision we make is based on that. Is just what can we do to show what is great about this city and the people and really connect to them. And and then it's really, you dig into what are you good at? What can you be the best in the world at, or what can you do that separates you from the other 29 clubs in baseball and the other, hundreds of professional sports teams around the world. So it's just focusing on your strengths and making them even more and more and more strong as you go, because everyone, the worst thing that you could do is just be another baseball team that covers stuff on social. You have to be the Pittsburgh Pirates. You have to showcase that in a way that resonates with Pirates fans, and by extension also, the rest of the sports industry. Um but staying true to who you are and staying true to who, your organization is and what got you to where you are, and really diving into that.
I have never met fans like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia fans who are more passionate about their city and their sports teams before in my life. I'm like, y'all are proud fans, no matter across the board, too, whether it's baseball, football, hockey. passionate fans.
Yeah, I think that's why we hate each other so much too,
Probably.
because like it's just that's it. Is like we're so similar, and
Yeah.
I have friends that work with the Phillies and things, but it's like there's no sports team for the rest of my life that I will hate more than the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's because I've grown up as a Penguins fan my whole life, and that is like it's just part of your blood, and it's like, and it's very much like it's the same mindset where it's, whoever grew up as a Flyers fan will never like the Penguins
Yep,
because that's just how it works. And I
yep.
think it's just because we're so similar.
Let me tell you, as a Carolina Hurricanes fan, I enjoy playing the Pittsburgh Penguins because it's always a great game. Like, I'm a fan who sits there, I'm like, I don't want to go to a game and see a boring game and see us just
Yeah.
blow out somebody. I want to see an aggressive, fun hockey game, and Pittsburgh brings it every time.
Yeah, I'm hoping and praying for a couple more wins here and there, but yeah, I mean, I've lived through the years where Mario Lemieux, Yarmir Yager leading us to Stanley Cups, all the way through, when Dick Tarnstrom, who was a defenseman, was our leading scorer, and so it's like I've seen the good and the bad, and the good is definitely much more fun than the bad,
Yes.
but yeah, keep my fingers crossed for the Pens.
Going from NASCAR to football and then to MLB now, was there a learning curve in terms of social media and your tactics there? You're shaking your head. Yes. What was that learning curve? How did that mindset have to change for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in NASCAR, we were just a big company, but very much a subset of a bigger company. So there was, I forget what the name of the company was called, but they basically owned like 8 or 9 different racetracks, and we were one of those tracks. So it was like my department, which I think there was maybe 5 of us, we were, PR, the website,
Yep.
social media, content, consumer marketing,
Um,
what else? Like there was
all the things.
probably, yes, like a ton of different departments. So it's like it was great because you got to learn so much. But then moving from there to the Steelers, it was a little bit of culture shock where it was like the Steelers don't have 5 people who do, 5 different departments. It's like there's a department for everything. And so, also from NASCAR to the Steelers, NASCAR, we had 2 races a year, and we're a building and like a plot of land. And it's like, how do you make people excited about that for, the other 363 days of year? And like, I definitely owe that experience, a lot of respect, because that's what kind of, I think, why I'm a little bit better at making something out of nothing in times where it's like if you're in the off season and there's not stuff happening. I've kind of already gone through the most, prolonged off season that there has been in NASCAR. So it definitely helped me in my thinking and creativity. But going from a company that was a little bit smaller to the Steelers, that, this global brand that, everyone follows, everyone knows who the logo is when you see it. And then also, um, being their only full-time social media person, it was kind of like you're in the driver's seat. It's time to learn and soak everything in and grow. And so it's like I knew Steelers fans, which was also a leg up in what I was doing because I was a Steeler fan. And like, so understanding what fans are trying to see and what fans are looking for, I could lean into that. And that was the same with NASCAR. Like I said, I was never a NASCAR fan, but when I was there, we were marketing toward the younger demographic who didn't really know about NASCAR, who might be interested. And it was like, well, I'm marketing to myself. So it's like that made it a little bit easier. So then going to the Cardinals, which I knew nothing about the Arizona Cardinals, had never been to Arizona until my first interview, just knew nothing about it. So like once I got there, it was all about like, I have to learn as much as I can, not only about the team, but the fan base and the area and what these people care about. Because, when I first got there, we just started doing what I planned to do with the Steelers, and it didn't work. It just wasn't, it's not the same fan base. It's the same sport, but it wasn't the same fan base. So trying to figure out how that even worked, and connecting with these fans was difficult. So it was like you immerse yourself in the culture, you immerse yourself in the location, and try and do your best to connect with them in ways that they're looking to be connected with. And then moving to baseball, it's like, well, I've done social and content in the NFL for 7 years. Like I'm good. Like content's content. And you get to baseball, and it's completely different because there's so many more games, meaning that there's so much less time to celebrate the big things, which also, I mean, counteractively, there's less time to dwell on the bad things, but like it's just the windows are so much tighter to tell these stories and capitalize on these moments. And then just with all of the different new rules, the affiliates, and having a minor league system and telling those stories, and the different international prospects, and even just the language barrier that you deal with in baseball, where it's like in football, I think I had two guys who spoke Spanish the entire time I was in the NFL, and half of our team is from outside the United States in baseball. So it's trying to connect the dots and really earn their trust and let them know that we're just trying to make them look good and tell their story, and not expecting them to be anyone else aside from who they are. So I would say at each step there was a different thing that I needed to learn. And then even making the jump from the Steelers to the Cardinals, going from a coordinator to a director, and then having to be responsible for other people underneath me, was just a whole different atmosphere that, I don't know that I was great at it at first, but I think I'm getting a little bit better as I go. But it's just every step was a new challenge.
I didn't even think about going from the Steelers to Arizona. Like the thought of consumer in the audience, like that wasn't even like one of my top ones that I thought of. But as soon as you said it, I'm like, duh.
It was hard because like Arizona's also a relocated team. Like there was no football team in Phoenix until the Cardinals showed up in the 80s, but by then everyone who lived in Phoenix already had a football team, so it was like the Cowboys were big. Any game that we played, probably for all three seasons, where it was like we played the Steelers, we played the Packers, we played the Cowboys, we played the Chiefs, the Patriots, our building was filled with those fans instead of our own. And it's like it was so different than
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, where it's like if you're not wearing, like, you'd be hard pressed to find someone not wearing black and gold at a Steelers game. So it's like it was just those things that were just so shocking when you first get there and figure it out. But then it's like, but there are fans out there that you need to connect with and bring them together and try and get more and more people at the stadium, and more of that, red and white to State Farm Stadium. And it was such a big shock when I first got there.
Hop into very good social media podcast. You set the stage for in the very beginning. Why focus on this topic specifically around social media? Why this one?
Well, I mean, for me specifically, it was more about just I learned so much from so many great people about just a variety of topics. And really, it's like you'll start talking with someone in the industry, and by the end you've learned 13 things that you had no idea you even had a question about. So it was like, how can I bring those conversations to a larger audience than just myself? And it was less predicated on I have so much information that I want to share, and so much that it was more of like I have been blessed to get to know and work with and call a lot of these people friends that are just so amazingly talented and creative and brilliant, and like bringing them to as many people as I can and shining a light on them and their story and their mindset and their skills and how they do things was just something that I was just so passionate about, and hope that I can continue moving down that path. But it was the idea was very simple. It was just I have learned from so many amazing people in my life that I would like for more people to hear from those amazing people. And so, I'm very thankful that all these people have, consented to be on the podcast and are willing to share all the great information and the things that they do. But it's as simple as that. I have learned from so many great people, and I feel like I owe it to the next generation to help as much as I can. And I'm not one to say that I'm some expert or I know all the answers, because I don't, and I'm still learning. And these conversations are helping me too, and I'm learning from a lot of great people still to this day. But the more of a conversation we can have about this stuff, the better, because there truly is, there's no right or wrong formula for doing social media or content. It's everyone has their own perspective, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, and it's just about trying to figure it all out together.
And I don't think there is a shortage of people who are graduating from college or are moving through college and are wanting to go do something in sports for a team, to freelance and do their own thing, that are hungry to learn from something like this, to learn from a TikTok account or whatever it may be. There's no shortage of that. We see it all over LinkedIn of people asking and people sharing tips from their own experiences. So I think as much as you're learning, like you're helping others learn too that are coming up who could possibly be part of your team one day, or part of one of your guest teams further down the line.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, it's crazy to think that like the social media world is so vast and so big and so expansive, but it's also kind of small at the same time. Like it's just learning from each other and connecting. And I just spoke with Zach Peggins, who's the social manager with the Seattle Kraken, and he's saying, it's cool to have other social managers within the same, geographic location to bounce ideas off of. So like it's the same thing with me. I've known Andy Perelman, who's VP of digital and content with the or digital marketing with the Penguins, and I've known her forever. And it's like her and I can bounce ideas off of each other. Kyle Crone, who's I think he's the senior manager of social media with the Steelers, him and I worked together and I hired Kyle when I was with the Steelers. So like just being able to bounce ideas off of each other locally is such a big help because not only are you going through the same issues and the same problems, but you're also doing it in the same region. So basically taking that idea and expanding it to this podcast too, where it's like now we're all kind of learning together, no matter if it's Seattle or Kansas City or Brooklyn or Miami or Pittsburgh, we're all kind of making this community a little bit smaller and talking through things together.
What I liked in what you said in the beginning too, if you sat down with people beforehand that you have known and you had conversations, asked questions about starting this podcast. I don't think a lot of people do that and kind of once again bounce ideas off and say, "Hey, should I start this? What should I know?" kind of questions. Why did you decide to have those conversations with close people and then people you look up to as well in terms of getting into this podcasting world?
Well, again, it kind of goes back to that always wanting to make sure everything's perfect before you push it out. And so it was like, I think in that instance, it helped me where one thing it's like I put it out there in the world of, I'm a big person of like writing down your goals, writing down, what you want to achieve, because once it's out there in the universe, it's hard to just be like, no, 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 I was just kidding. I was just kidding. So it was like, so I put it out there on LinkedIn just to say, like, I've really been thinking of putting a podcast together. Here's what I'm thinking I want to do. Anyone who has any tips, please let me know. And, there were people who I didn't even know who reached out and said, I'm happy to help in any way I can. And then it's like jumping on these conversations and talking with people who do podcasts and like just things that I never thought of, like buying a microphone. Like that never even like rang true in my head until it was like, oh yeah, I should probably have one of those. So it was just, again, trying to leave no stone unturned and learn as much as I can about something that I didn't know as much about. And it always helps. I mean, no matter what you're trying to do, there's always people out there who have already done it and are doing it better than you are going to do it.
Yeah,
So why not learn from them and try and take some tips from them to succeed.
100%. Is your podcast set up like, are you set up pretty good now? Or are you still like, I want to do this and I want to have this background? Or what does it look like?
I mean, right now, like this is the setup right now. Luckily enough, Chad Burns, who is one of the illustrator with the Arizona Cardinals. These were things we had hanging in our office, and as we kind of rotated his prints, we would take them home. But this is basically the setup. Like I'm down in my basement.
Oh,
There's a weight bench across from me. Like there's only so much you can do,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's less about kind of the atmosphere and more about how can I make each interview better and how can I bring up topics and ask questions that are valuable to other people. And so I think we're on the right track. I had 40 episodes scheduled, but that was a lot and there's a lot going on in my life. So dropped it back to like 25. Hopefully we'll have a season two to bring the other guests back, but have everything set up. I think we have 15 episodes already done, scheduled for every Monday at noon, and just excited to see where it goes. You know, have some great guests and some people that I've known for a long time, some people that I'm talking to for the first time, and it's been a blast.
I love it too. You do. For those who can't see behind Zachary's like shoulder right now, you literally have like Kyler Murray like looking over you. I love it. It's what I've been staring at this whole time. I'm like, he's got Kyler Murray just over his shoulder, just absolutely staring at everybody.
Yeah, I think it's CEB Originals or Chad Burns Originals, but he like on Instagram, he's
Love
the
it.
absolute best in the business and has done so many incredible things and really elevated our content when I was in Arizona and they keep elevating since I've been gone too.
When you are getting ready to talk to a guest, you've hinted at you kind of go in and you are focusing on their jobs, their overall concepts, and what kind of digital or social that they do. How deep into research do you kind of go for each of your guests? I've said for years, I'm like, I go down the rabbit hole and then the next rabbit hole because I'm so interested to see just the sheer experience that somebody's had. But how far do you go into your research?
For me, it's a little bit of both. I think if I have too much research and too much planned, it kind of takes away from the conversation because I'm trying to get people to different points all the way through. So I definitely do my research and I know kind of where their stops have been and what their experience is in and some specific questions that I want to ask about their expertise. But for the most part, it's like I get it started, let them tell their story about their journey and where they came from, and then the conversation just goes. I have like 50 or 60 questions that I have written down, and I think I get through maybe four of them every interview, and then we just kind of let it go where it goes. But every conversation, it's like just like social, I mean, you have no idea where it's going to end up or what's going to come up that sparks the next question. And I think, just like even any of the presentations or public speaking I've done in the past, if I'm not too prepared, but if I'm too structured, it takes away from what I'm trying to say because I'm trying to hit bullet points instead of just speak to what I know. So I'm one that always probably does too much research. So I'm trying to hold myself back from digging too far into it and letting, the conversation guide.
I used to be this, I used to go into every conversation with this massive list of questions, and it used to be like, boom, 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 boom. I have to ask these questions. And it left no time for conversations. And now I'm like, very good social media podcast is one bullet. I'm like, that's what I want to hit. And then we'll figure out where that conversation goes. And then the other one's like, your experience in sports. And I'm like, and we'll see where the conversation goes. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's all I care about. That's all I really want to hit on. And to your point, you got to let it flow. And I learned from a lot of people, they're like, if you are thinking about that next question you're going to ask, you're not actually listening to your guest. And I was like, it's so true. Cause I'm sitting there, I'm like, I got to ask this next question. I have to ask this next question. So it's been educational for the last 5 years. I'm like, okay, we can trim this down and we can trim this down more. And we don't have to go down the rabbit holes as far as we used to.
Yeah, and I mean every podcast that I'm a fan of, it's like it's very much it's just a conversation. And you think that, these people have known each other for years and it's just entertaining and you're excited to see where it goes next time. And it's just like if it's too structured, it's less, like you said, it's less listening and less responding and more just talking at each other. And it's like that's not entertaining. So
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, Zachary, my last question for you is just what inspires you?
oh, what inspires me? It's probably I think the easiest answer is probably, my family. Just doing all that I can to make sure that they're always taken care of and that they don't have to worry about anything. And, I'm fine shouldering any stress or pain or anything like that. I want to make life easier for, my wife, my little one, and the rest of my family. And and going to church is a big thing for me and my family, and making sure that our spiritual mind is in the right place as well. But for me, it's all about that. If whatever the job may be, whatever the task is I want to make sure that I'm making my family proud and making sure that I'm, you know, keeping them in mind, and making sure that they're taken care of in all aspects. So I think it's as simple as that. And I love learning. I love what I do, and I couldn't imagine doing anything different. But it all goes back to family.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and sitting down with me and letting me dive into your world a little bit more. I know we're in spring training right now, so it's getting ready to be busy season for you.
Yes, yeah, I actually have the game on right now, bottom of the seventh, against the Orioles. But it's always something. We always talk about like the off season, but I mean, it doesn't exist. It's either planning and strategy season or game season, and there's always something. It's a different kind of mindset and a different brain power, but it's all amazing, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
I always make the joke. I'm like, oh, hockey season's over. All right, here comes baseball. All right, baseball's over. Okay, here comes football, and we're just rotating around. There's
That's
always
it.
something on.
It's always something.
Always something. Well, thank you so much again, you guys. If you do not listen to the Very Good Social Media Podcast, Zachary said it every Monday, brand new episode. Uh, there is one on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. But Zachary, thank you so much for joining me. All of his socials are going to be linked down below. Um, and as always, I will see you guys back here next time. Bye, y'all.